You are tuned in to the LowBand Show, broadcasting from the storm drains under the big city, where a tunnel crew runs this booth on salvaged gear, pipes humming, steady water dripping, piping surface science and tech news on a low-band signal through the drains. I'm your host, Max Hertz. Welcome in. Here's what we do. We take real science and tech news from the surface, summarize it, then go deeper to educate, entertain, and shed light on what's in store for our collective future. News from the net, clear signal, and a little tunnel. If you came for hype, you took a wrong turn at the storm drain. Welcome in, underground and on the air. Good to have you with us for today's broadcast. Wiz, good to have you in the booth today.
Good to be back in the booth, Max. Ready when you are.
Today we're diving into the evolving landscape of work and technology. We'll examine the impact of automation and AI on major corporations, alongside the challenges facing social media and digital content ownership. On the board, we've got GM installing robots after layoffs, Oracle cutting jobs while embracing AI, the UK considering forcing social media firms to prioritize trusted news, and the Wikipedia co-founder banned from the site. Plus, gamers are suing PlayStation over game ownership. Let's get into it.
Here's the breakdown. Crane's Detroit Business and the Detroit News reported on June 22, 2026, that General Motors is installing new robots at its Flagship EV factory, even as 1,300 workers remain laid off. This move is sparking significant union pushback and raising questions about automation's impact on employment. Wiz, this is quite a situation. Dozens of new robot arms have been installed at General Motors' Flagship electric vehicle factory in Detroit, even as 1,300 workers remain out of work following what was supposed to be a temporary layoff. The latest automation push has spurred union pushback over a potentially existential issue for automakers and their workers.
The headline is directionally correct. It's a classic tension. New technology promising efficiency, but with a direct impact on the workforce. And the workers are not pleased, especially after already being laid off.
General Motors installed approximately 50 robot arms at GM's Factory Zero plant in Detroit, Michigan, according to reporting by Crane's Detroit Business. Made by the Japanese robotics company Fanuc, the robots are designed to help attach various components to vehicles during the assembly line process. Wiz, for listeners who may not know, what is Fanuc?
Fanuc is one of the world's largest manufacturers of industrial robots, particularly known for their robotic arms used in factory automation. Here, they're integrating into the EV assembly line. The interesting bit is the timing, given the UAW's clear stance.
Leaders at United Auto Workers, the primary U.S. union for auto workers, reacted with anger to the new robotic presence, given how GM has not yet called back any of the workers affected by supposedly temporary layoffs in March. More than 1,000 union members are still laid off indefinitely, James Cotton, president of UAW Local 22, told the Detroit News. He said that the company could bring some of those members back to work instead of installing the 50 robots.
That is a direct challenge to the narrative of temporary layoffs. The union's point is clear. If there's budget for new automation, there should be budget for rehiring, especially when the robots are doing tasks that could potentially be done by those same workers. It exposes the incentives at play.
This situation is not isolated. Many automakers, including Stellantis NV and Ford Motor Company, have deployed assembly line robots as they push to automate more of their U.S. operations. Even Hyundai Motor Company plans to deploy Atlas humanoid robots made by Boston Dynamics to start working in their Flagship EV facility in Georgia by 2028.
It shows a broader trend in the automotive industry. The efficiency gains from robotics are undeniable, but the human cost, in terms of employment, is the contentious point. The shift to EVs requires new production methods, and companies are clearly opting for increased automation to meet those demands.
Technological development has the capability of making work safer for the working class and enabling workers to have a shorter work week without losing pay, said Andrew Bergman, a Local 22 member and union organizer who was among those laid off by GM. But in the bosses' and billionaires' hands, it's used to pad profits and lay off workers.
Bergman's statement frames the core disagreement. Automation is presented either as a tool for societal improvement and worker benefit, or as a means to solely increase profit margins. The current situation with GM suggests the latter, at least in the short term.
The full implications here remain uncertain. It's an open question how this will ultimately develop. Here's the breakdown. The BBC reported on June 23, 2026, that Oracle cut roughly 21,000 jobs over the past year as it reorganizes around AI. This raises questions about the human cost of AI adoption. Wiz, this is significant news. The software and cloud computing firm says it had around 141,000 full-time employees as of May 31, 2026, down from about 162,000 workers at the same time last year. The deployment of AI technologies across our operations have resulted and may continue to result in reductions to our workforce, the report says.
That's a 13% reduction. Not insignificant. The company is framing this as an AI-driven efficiency play, but it's explicitly stating that more cuts may continue. That's less a promise of progress and more a warning.
The cuts, which amount to about 13% of Oracle's workforce, are part of a wider trend among tech firms as they spend hundreds of billions of dollars on building AI infrastructure, like data centers. Wiz, for listeners who may not know, what exactly is Oracle known for?
Oracle is a long-standing enterprise tech giant, primarily known for its database software, and more recently, its expanding cloud computing services. Essentially, they build and manage the foundational digital plumbing for large businesses. These cuts signal a shift towards automating aspects of that infrastructure.
The restructuring cost the company about $1.8 billion. And while Oracle says AI deployment may drive further reductions, it also warns the cuts could create skill shortages and hurt productivity.
That caveat about skill shortages and hurt productivity is critical. It implies that these cuts aren't just smooth efficiency gains. There's a recognized risk of degrading internal capabilities, even as they chase AI-driven reductions.
It remains uncertain how these significant workforce changes will impact Oracle's long-term operational efficiency and its ability to innovate. It's too early to tell if this bet on AI will pay off without creating new, unforeseen challenges. The headline promises a lot, so let's see what the paper actually says. The UK Culture Department reported on Monday that Britain is considering forcing social media companies to prioritize what the government calls trusted news sources. This move could significantly alter how we consume information online, and it raises major questions about content regulation. Wiz, this sounds like a complex issue.
Indeed. The core mechanism here is an attempt to use platform architecture to enforce a particular view of truth. Defining trusted news sources will be the first battle, especially when it includes public service media like BBC and ITV, but extends to other trusted news providers.
For listeners who may not know, what exactly does public service media refer to in this context, Wiz?
Public service media in the British context refers to broadcasters like the BBC, ITV, and Channel 4, mandated to serve a public purpose, often through funding or charter obligations. The platforms are right to push back on user choice. It's a classic tension, top-down content curation versus the messy reality of user preference and the free flow of information.
The government said boosting the visibility of regulated news providers could help tackle misinformation, particularly during crises. However, any move to influence how platforms rank content is likely to face scrutiny from the social media firms, which say such rules could override user choice and disadvantage other creators. This proposal is part of a broader overhaul of Britain's public service media system, aiming to help broadcasters compete with streaming platforms. Ministers are also considering widening public service media status to include online-only providers, and even consulting on a shift to internet-based TV as far out as 2044. So this isn't just about social media, but a much larger reevaluation of media consumption.
That's a significant scope expansion. The shift to internet-based TV by 2044 signals a long-term strategic play to redefine what broadcasting means in the digital age. It's an attempt to ensure traditional public service values persist, even as the delivery mechanisms entirely change.
Culture Minister Lisa Nandy stated, "It is vital that we make sure that people have better access to trusted and accurate news, and that our regulated public service media is seen and heard in the fierce battle against mis- and disinformation." This clearly outlines the government's intent.
The phrase fierce battle against mis- and disinformation suggests an urgent, almost wartime footing. It positions the government as the arbiter of truth, which, while understandable in a crisis, also opens up questions about censorship and the potential for overreach.
The full implications of these proposals remain uncertain. It's an open question how social media firms will respond and if a true balance can be struck between tackling misinformation and maintaining platform neutrality. Here's the breakdown. 404 Media reported on June 23, 2026, that Wikipedia co-founder Larry Sanger has been indefinitely banned from the site for what editors call canvassing. This raises critical questions about content moderation and free speech. Wiz, what do we know about this situation?
The headline is precise. Canvassing here means calling on his followers off-platform to sway Wikipedia's content, which is a policy violation. Sanger sees it as suppression of ideological diversity, while editors view it as outside interference.
For listeners who may not be familiar, what exactly is Wikipedia?
Wikipedia is a free, web-based collaborative encyclopedia written and maintained by a community of volunteers. It's built on an open editing model, where articles are created and modified by anyone, subject to its editorial policies and consensus.
Thank you, Wiz. The report states, the discussion that led to the decision to ban Sanger concluded with what an editor called a clear consensus to ban Sanger. There is general agreement among participants that he has engaged in off-wiki canvassing and is not here to constructively build the encyclopedia, the editor said in a note closing the discussion. There is also a significant concern shared by many editors that his actions constitute calls for outing.
The editor's stance is firm. The phrase, "not here to constructively build the encyclopedia," is a key indicator they believe his actions moved beyond good faith contribution to external manipulation. The outing concern adds a serious layer to their rationale.
The article further clarifies the specific issue. While Sanger has been railing about bias on Wikipedia for years, the specific issue here is around his wiki project intellectual diversity. Wiki projects are group efforts among Wikipedia volunteers to deal with certain issues on the site. Sanger's wiki project intellectual diversity, as its name implies, aims to bring more intellectual diversity to the site, mostly meaning more right-leaning perspectives. Sanger's wiki project intellectual diversity and its goals alone do not merit a ban according to Wikipedia's policies. The problem, according to Wikipedia editors, is that during the discussion about whether to allow wiki project intellectual diversity to become an official wiki project, Sanger invited his 91,000 followers on X to influence that discussion.
So it wasn't the goal of intellectual diversity that triggered the ban, but the method. Leveraging a large external social media following, specifically 91,000 followers on X, to sway an internal Wikipedia policy discussion is precisely the off-wiki canvassing they're citing.
Sanger's response to the ban is equally pointed. He stated, Wikipedia has become more of a mob rule anarchy than ever. In the kangaroo court in which a mob ousted me, Wikipedia's administrators showed that they don't appear to value details like formal charges, a designated prosecutor, basic decorum, distinction between prosecution and judge, dispassionate adjudication, and so forth. They have no proper system other than triggering a mob to selectively enforce their hodgepodge of vague rules.
That's a strong accusation. He's framing the entire process as a procedural failure, a kangaroo court driven by an unrestrained mob, rather than a legitimate enforcement of policy. It highlights a fundamental disagreement over Wikipedia's governance and how its rules are applied.
The implications of this ban for the broader discussion around platform governance and ideological diversity remain uncertain. It's an open question how this will resonate within the Wikipedia community and beyond. Here's the breakdown. The gaming news site Aftermath reported on June 18, 2026, that 4 gamers are suing Sony Interactive Entertainment. They argue it's unclear if PlayStation is selling game licenses or actual ownership of digital games. Wiz, this raises fundamental questions about digital rights. Sony Interactive Entertainment's PlayStation Store uses language like buy now and confirm purchase, lawyers wrote in a complaint filed on Thursday. In reality, consumers who purchase digital games through PlayStation do not obtain ownership of those products, lawyers wrote. Instead, PlayStation grants only a limited, revocable license to access the software, subject to multiple restrictions contained in a separate software product license agreement.
That language is the crux here. When you see buy now, you expect to own, not lease. A limited revocable license implies the platform can pull access at any time, which fundamentally changes the user's expectation of ownership.
Wiz, for listeners who might not be familiar, what exactly does a software product license agreement mean in practical terms, and how does it affect digital ownership?
A software product license agreement essentially means you're paying for permission to use the software, not to own it. It grants specific rights under certain conditions, which can be revoked. This is distinct from owning a physical product, where your rights are generally much broader.
The PlayStation Store does have a disclosure. Above the Confirm Purchase button, there's a note. By selecting Confirm Purchase, you agree to complete the purchase in accordance with the PlayStation Terms of Service before using this content. You further acknowledge that your purchase of this digital product amounts to a license subject to the Software Product License Agreement. These four gamers aren't satisfied with that. They said in the complaint that it's too small, and that a reasonable customer completing a purchase would not necessarily notice this disclosure.
Placing a critical legal disclosure in fine print above the Confirm Purchase button is a classic move. It technically exists, but the user experience is designed to minimize its impact. The reasonable customer argument here is key.
The full implications of these digital rights discussions remain uncertain. It's an open question how consumer expectations will evolve in the landscape of digital content. That's our board for today. We've explored the complex relationship between technology and the workforce, from GM's robot installations causing layoffs to Oracle's significant AI-driven job cuts. Then we moved into platform governance, considering the UK's proposals for prioritizing trusted news and the contentious ban of Wikipedia co-founder Larry Sanger. Finally, we looked at evolving digital rights, with gamers suing PlayStation over the ownership of their purchased digital games. These stories highlight ongoing tensions between innovation, governance, and consumer expectations. Many open questions remain on how these developments will shape our digital and working lives. We'll keep watching for new signals on these threads and have more build and science stories queued for the next session. Keep your skepticism calibrated. We'll pick up the thread.
It's certainly a lot to consider. If we missed an angle or you have further questions on these topics, please drop us a comment. We read them down here in the tunnel. And if this signal helped you stay informed, a like or subscribe keeps the pipes humming. More surface news and deeper dives are coming through the grate soon. Until then, stay curious, and we'll catch you next time on the LowBand Show.